Preaching Peace, the life of Stanley Delves of Crowborough, Sussex. And he tells here about his call to the ministry and how he responded to it. For some time I was in Scotland with very little to do, for the war was over and we were awaiting discharge, and I had ample opportunity to pursue what was in my mind. Well now, it was there in Scotland that I began to feel the call to the ministry, and it came to pass this way. When we came back to Scotland, the Lord was pleased to revive my spirit again. This was not through any particular means, because although I went from church to church in Irvine, I never heard anything that was of a profitable nature at all. The sermons were dry, and the ministers simply read them like essays. There was neither life nor power in them to me, so I used to take my Bible and read that instead. I had plenty of time, so I took my Bible and went out on the moors where I could be all alone and read. In that way, the Lord returned to me, drawing me back again to himself, and my old feelings of faith and hope and love revived again. But something else came with it. For one thing, I used to find my mind directed to the epistles of Paul to Timothy, and as I read those epistles to Timothy, which, as you will know, were very largely bearing on the ministry, it seemed to me as though Paul's directions and admonitions were like a living voice speaking to me in those scriptures, such as these: preach the word, be instant in season and out of season, let no man despise thy youth, and scriptures like that. Others that do not just now occur to me seemed to me like a living voice. I do not exaggerate when I say that it could not have been more so if those epistles had been verbally directed to me instead of Timothy. They were so personal. And that was not all. As I used to read and ponder over the scriptures, the precious truths of the gospel were opened up to my understanding in a way and with an effect I had not felt before. They were not new doctrines to me, but they seemed clothed with a new fullness and depth and power, especially such a doctrine as the Trinity. Oh, the fullness and the blessedness and the glory I seemed to see in the Trinity, and the person and work and atonement and sacrifice of Jesus Christ. These truths seemed opened up to me with a fullness that I had not seen before. This produced in me a strong urge to preach those truths. Indeed, whenever I had any fresh entrance into the doctrines of the gospel, it was sure to have that effect upon my spirit, and I felt that I would be called to preach those things. I think it could be said, quite honestly, that the substance of my preaching over the past 50 years was shown to me and taught to me when I was all alone in Scotland with nothing but my Bible. No minister, no books, nothing but the Bible and prayer. So it seemed to me as though the words of Timothy were a call to me to preach. And the opening up of those deep and blessed truths showed me what I was to preach. I was to preach those things. And then there was something else. There was the insistence of this word upon my mind in such a way but I could not but feel that it was from the Lord. Behold, I have set before thee an open door, and no man can shut it. In my concern, I felt this word, I have set before thee an open door, was capable of proof, whether it was from the Lord or not. I felt, now, I will say nothing whatever about this. I will keep my counsel, because if this word really is from the Lord, he will open a door for me into the ministry without my touching the matter. And I thought, if I say anything or give any indication that I am under this exercise, I might very well be asked to preach, and then I shall never know whether the Lord opened that door or not. So with these feelings very urgent on my mind and spirit, I was discharged from the army, and I came back to Hailsham to live with my mother. An interesting sidelight on this period of Stanley's life is given in an extract from a letter by an old friend of his, Mr. R. Saunders. He never spoke of his exercises concerning the ministry, but I know that when there was a need at the Little Dicker Chapel for a minister, I was led to suggest his name to a Mr. Vinell, who was responsible for supplies. And Mr. Vinell then wrote to Stanley, who accepted the call and preached his first sermon at the chapel which Mr. John Grace called his Little Bethel on the Dicker. And this is what Stanley Delves writes. I went over on the Sunday, found this little chapel, and spoke in the morning without either much liberty or bondage, so far as I remember. I spoke from the memory of the meditation that I had in Scotland. However, in the evening I spoke from another word, and as soon as I had read the verse, at once I felt my heart enlarged and my mouth opened, and I spoke with much liberty, without any mental effort at all. It just simply came flowing into my mind. So I set it forth. Well, after the service was over, the few friends, perhaps not more than 5 or 6, gathered round me and asked me when I was coming again. Stanley Delves with his daughter Rachel, preaching peace.